Hello, I'm Lelda Smits for the Capital Network. Joining me here at Sydney's award-winning cocktail voodoo bar, Papa Gede's, is Steve Keen, author and Professor of Economics at Kingston University. Steve, welcome back to Sydney.
Lovely to be here.
Now, Steve, 2016 will be known as the year that the forecasters and the crystal ball gazers really got it ridiculously wrong. We ended up with Brexit, we ended up with Trump. Now, in 2017, let's forget about why it happened and instead look at what this really means for our global economy. Mm-hmm. Starting with the basics, how do governments and money work?
This at the moment is the economy. Now, what I'm looking at, I'm not looking at the goods and services produced in the economy like all the stuff behind us here at the bar. I'm looking at money. How does money turn up in the economy? What most people think is the government makes the money. So they think the government just pours a certain amount of money in, and if the government pours in too much, and here we have a little, there we go, it's going the opposite direction.
And I'm sure the government has a much easier
system than that, okay?
Tap than this, one that goes far more than a few drops.
Yeah, okay.
But it's dropping
but
away
that's actually a bit like what governments are doing right now, because they think they simply can't put too much money in there, otherwise they'll run out.
And what do we have on the other side then?
Well, we have
Don't worry, I'm holding on to the government here. It's tipping
dribbling
along.
in at a very slow pace.
Yeah, and over here, what's this?
But here you have the banks.
A skeleton's arm.
Yeah, well, the banks were quite happy to give you money as well, but there's a condition. They'll only give you money over here if they also pour an equivalent amount of stuff over here. We have money coming in through here, and we have debt. Exactly the same amount of debt as money is stored by the banks, and then you owe them what's turned up over here. So we have a dribble of money coming in from the government. Most of the money in the economy is actually created by the banks. And what the banks do, when they lend you money, which is what's happening over here, and now you're having a pile up of debt over here, hence the dead hand.
Sure thing.
Governments create by spending, banks create by creating debt.
Well, I think we've got to turn these taps on before this debt explodes.
That's the trouble, we haven't. Okay, because the government has decided in its own infinitely low level of wisdom, and this is where the politicians come in. They might call the politicians over here,
right.
A bit of a dead skull. They believe the government can run out of money.
Okay.
Now, in fact, what the government has at the same time is called a central bank. The central bank has a limitless capacity to add money up there. So there actually is no possibility of the government running out of money. But that's the belief that we have. So they say we're going to run out of money, and if you say, what they say instead is we have to tax you. Okay, we're going to run out of money. If we don't tax, we won't have any money to spend.
So, Steve, these are really the fundamentals here of government, bank, debt. If we look at actually how this is playing out in the global economy, and let's move to Europe.
Yeah.
We have, let's say here, I might do some pouring now, rather messily, but all the smaller EU economies, all 28 of them. So here is the EU, 28 countries, smaller, larger. Obviously, Brexit has occurred. Article 50 will be triggered in the coming months. When we take the UK out of the EU, Steve Keen, what is going to happen?
Well, I've always said not very much, because one thing that that England did not do is join the euro. So actually we should use a different colour here, if I can just top this up a bit and call this the British pound.
Right.
Okay, what we have is a different currency, and there's no limit for the British capacity to continue creating its own money.
So are you at all concerned of the impact of Brexit? What will it be to the EU?
Moderately, but my feeling about Brexit has always been that England is only a partial member of the club to begin with. It never joined the euro, which is a gigantic difference between itself and the other economies. I think England has got out thinking we've got away and what a big mistake we've made, we've lost access to this big market, etc., etc. I think at some stage the club is going to disband, because quite possibly Italy, and certainly if Marine Le Pen wins in France, they're going to leave the club. And once they're gone, the club won't be there anymore.
But Steve,
Brexit may be Britain getting out of the whole thing before the others get out and being in a better situation because they're more prepared.
Sure thing. Now, if we get to the other surprise of 2016, it was, of course, Trump. So let's use this glass for old America, maybe also some Havana Club. Steve, who is Trump going to be pouring drinks for, as in economic growth and benefits in 2017?
He's trying to pour it just for his own economy. And this is going to be the dramatic challenge he faces, because he is someone who actually knows a lot about money and banks and debt, having used it extensively in his own professional career.
And succeeded and failed. And hopefully learned
he's
from
turned
the
failure
failures
into success in many, many ways. And let's not go there in terms of how beneficial that was for his various suppliers. But he understands going bankrupt. He He understands reorganisation.
So where is this liquid going in 2017?
He's going to realise at some point he owns his own bank now. Okay, because he's running the country.
So we have the Federal Reserve, right?
The Federal Reserve
over
is
here.
there. The Federal Reserve can top him up as much as he likes. Now, the Federal Reserve.
So when does this stop, Steve? That's the magic question.
It never has to stop. He's going to enable the American economy to spend dramatically because
I assume this is going in here.
There's going to be no taxation is going to be cut. There'll be an increase in government spending. There'll be a large deficit coming out of that. So the government's going to be creating a lot of money and running a lot of infrastructure projects and so on. There are 4 million Americans who aren't employed now who were employed back in 2000. And people are going to get jobs in construction, start spending domestically and so on. And Trump's going to see that as boosting up the American economy. It's all about Buy America and Made in America and so on.
So, Steve, Trump has made no secret of being friends with Putin, and conveniently, we do have some vodka here. Mm-hmm. How do you think this friendship is going to play out over the coming year, and how will it impact our European economies down there below?
Putin gets demonised in America, and I can understand when they're demonising Stalin or demonising Khrushchev even, because they were competing political systems. You had a market-based system competing with a centrally planned system. That's no longer the case. So seeing this level of animosity, which is still being extended as if the Cold War is still going forward, to me is quite remarkable. What you have got is a power struggle.
And out of this power struggle here...
Well, the power struggle is really directed at Europe over here.
Where this transfer of liquid, we've got Russia here, the US...
Well, Russia is trying to move in and have influence on the European Union.
Right.
Trying to break down the power of the European Union.
And where do you think Trump will be moving?
He will no longer be over here
scenario?
blocking. What you have with America in many ways is saying, we're coming from the other side. We're going to block your power, attempt to extend your power. And what is really being said by Trump is we're not going to bother about that anymore. Europeans, you've got to handle Putin on your own.
So, Steve, we have the revolt against globalisation very much in place now. If this continues over the next 5 years, which of these economies are going to have the most liquid in their glass and which are going to be completely left dry?
Well, I think what's going to happen is this little club here is going to break up because I simply can't see the euro making it to 21. Okay, 2021, by that stage, I think the euro is over. That's my call by that stage, which means this little cabal here breaks apart, which actually is going to be good for quite a few of them, particularly Italy, because Italy has suffered so badly.
And the US. How are they going to fare in 5 years' time if we separate these guys?
I think America is still going to be the strongest economy on the planet. We actually haven't spoken about China here at all. We need a bit of Maotai on the scene. I think the main rival is not going to be the European and Russian situation over here. It's going to be what's happening with China. Let's bring, this is rather Mexican, but we'll take it as being one of the clay warriors. So in enters
the
China.
New player.
Now that is the main struggle between America and China, because Trump is quite right to say a huge part of American industry has relocated to China, and that has undermined the working class jobs that meant people voted for him in what is genuinely called the Rust Belt, because they have lost their jobs to China. All the economists said he doesn't know what he's talking about. Trump has got a much better handle on that than the professional economists have.
Well, Steve, so this is the space to watch, and perhaps that's our next instalment. For now, you certainly deserve a drink after all of this work. I must put the disclaimer on that neither of us are cocktail makers, but if you want an exceptional cocktail, you should come here to Papa Gede's down a laneway off Kent Street in Sydney. And in the meantime, Steve, thank you so much for your economic mixology and all the best for 2017.
Thank you.